All right, I'm gonna start it. All right. Let everybody get into the room.
How many participants do we have?
Well, right now there was 15, but we had 115 people registered.
Oh, I
And
see. It's counting.
yeah, and we will, yeah, it's starting to, it's getting a lot more people coming on. Give it just a minute. We'll get started. We'll start in about right at 6:30.
Certainly.
Hello.
Getting a good crowd tonight.
If I didn't know better, Representative Jackson, I think you were at my house. Look at the background, my background and your background. We're both sitting in front of a bookcase.
Oh, sure, but I got colds on mine. You got photos. How you doing? You
Yes,
look.
how observant of you.
I'm a little tired, but
I would have to switch rooms so that the case would be full of books. This one is full of photos.
that's beautiful. That's family, though. That's great.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. And I want to welcome everybody for joining us tonight. My name is Kathy Jones. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Alabama. And I want to thank you for being here tonight. And I want to, first of all, kick off with a little bit of housekeeping. This is being sent over a webinar type meeting. And you will notice that there is a Q&A section down at the bottom of your screen. That's where we're asking people, if you'll put your questions there, then that'll make it easier for us to, basically pull back, go through them and bring up the questions when the question and answers time comes. The chat, you can use that if you're having trouble, if you need us to, if something is not working right, let us know. And when we get through with this meeting, it's being recorded. And so when we will put this recording on our YouTube channel, and then after the meeting, we'll send it out to everyone who is registered, and along with any materials that are talked about tonight. And so let's get started. So I wanted to kick it off, first of all, and just say Alabama is one of only 3 states in this country that does not have some form of early voting. And early voting is family friendly. It helps young voters. It also is, hold on just a minute. I'm gonna. Early in-person voting will reduce the long lines on election day when there are elections with high turnout, which we need that really badly. And early voting, therefore, benefits both the voters and election workers. And in the lack of early voting impacts our voter turnout in Alabama. And in 2022, our statewide midterm election voter turnout was only 37%. And at that time, the national turnout rate was 46%. So that puts Alabama at the 5th lowest turnout in the whole country for the midterm. And then for the recent 2024 presidential election, Alabama had a 59% voter turnout compared to an national average of 64%. And you may have seen the headlines that said it was it was the lowest turnout in over 30 years. So we need to do whatever we can to, make it where people are able to vote conveniently and safely and securely. So Alabama's turnout is consistently low. The lack of early voting consistently has impacted voter turnout. And so we need to do better. And so we're going to get started on this panel to learn about how we can have early voting for Alabama. And we're super excited to be joined by 2 Alabama legislators who are champions of early voting. And they both prefiled early voting bills this year. And we're going to contrast and compare just so you can see the different, what the differences are, but also understanding the similarities, which is to help Alabama. We have Representative Adline Clark from District 97, Representative Thomas E. Jackson from District 68, and also joining us tonight is Sam Duff, Mr. Sam Duff from Voting Rights Policy Strategist from ACLU of Alabama. And so to kick this conversation off, I'm going to ask each panelist to give us a little bit of background information to introduce themselves to all of you. And so first of all, Representative Clark, would you go first?
I certainly will. Thank you, Kathy. And good evening, everyone. It's an honor to have been asked to serve on the panel this evening, and even more an honor to have the opportunity to address the citizens of Alabama, whom I have the honor of serving. I succeeded the late Dr. Yvonne Kennedy in the House of Representatives. She had served in the House for over 30 years when she passed in December of 2012. I was elected to an unexpired term in 2013. In May, I will have represented House District 97 for 12 years. I serve on many standing committees, as most state senators do. There are 35 of them, so they have to serve on more committees to cover all of the territory. There are 105 House members, as you may well be aware, with many of us in the House serving on 2 committees, sometimes more. I serve on 7 committees, including Constitution campaigns and elections, which vets or reviews bills that have to do with elections and voting. Those are the type bills that we have typically vetted during my tenure. I also serve on the Rules Committee, which helps to select the bills that will be debated and voted on in the full House of Representatives once they receive a favorable report from standing committees. Those are just 2 of the 7 committees that I serve on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Representative Jackson, would you please do the same? Introduce yourself to everyone. You're on mute right now. I think all right, there we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I want to say good evening to all, to you and to the panel, especially to my colleague, Representative Clark. I am Thomas Jackson, and I am serving in the House of Representatives of my 32nd year. I have Southwest Alabama, in other words. I have 7 counties, 6 counties, including full Monroe County. I have half counties in other districts. I was all the way over in Perry County last night in Marion at a meeting. So I have found myself in this predicament, not just the last 7 or 8 years. We introduced early voting maybe 12 years back because I thought it was simple and accessible for people to get to the ballot box. And it's a nonpartisan idea because it was Republicans and Democrats wanted elderly people here in Clark County, in my hometown, and in the district wanted. Why can't we vote early like other states? On bad weather days, they have to stand and sit and wait, and then when they have to adjust their schedules when things are not going well. If emergency comes up, they can't get to their voting place. They have some work shifts. Most of these paper mills down here are 3 shifts, or 2 shifts. They work from 12 to 12, and that eliminates their time. When they have shutdown emergency times, then that really throw everything out of whack. So they was asking that, why can't we have the opportunity to vote early like other states do? And I had this bill drafted several years back, and it's the simplest draft that I could get. Wanted to get, because I know Alabama don't like change, and so I tried to go to the most resistive way that we could get to this, having 3 to 4 days out before the next election, and we never got a hearing. Secretary of State was against it. I mean, and when the governor and the Secretary of State's against it, the House Speaker is against it. You don't even get your bill on the calendar. So these are some of the things that we have faced. And what this really does is open up and give access. It tells people that you care about them. What it does also is to allow handicapped people that have some disabilities or challenges, that they can go in when there's not a crowded force there, that they can go in and out and carry out their civic duties of voting. So
Yeah.
that's why we are moving in this direction.
Well, thank you so much. And we'll get more. We'll be digging in on that even more as we go through this conversation. And I'm going to now hand it off to Sam Duff, my friend. I feel like we see each other quite often nowadays.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you introduce yourself?
Yes, no problem. So good evening, everyone. I am Samuel Duff. I am the Voting Rights and Policy Strategist with the ACLU of Alabama. It's definitely both a blessing and a pleasure to be here with everyone that's on this call tonight, on this webinar. And I think it's a right time for us to really visit the ideas and focus of early voting. Just as mentioned earlier, Alabama is one of the 3 states, and now I've actually learned that it's 2, because Mississippi actually has preferential early voting. So now they are just able to essentially open up early voting for certain elections. So Alabama and New Hampshire now are the only 2 who don't have true early voting. So it's definitely, once again, it's a pleasure and a blessing to be here with all of you all. And I promise you I won't belabor the time. So Kathy, thank you for inviting me out to be here with the panelists as well. And I'm ready to get started if you are.
All right. Thank you. So one of the things I have come across when I've talked to people in the communities about early voting is there's often some confusion. When you hear people talking badly about early voting, a lot of times citizens are just confused about what is early voting and what is it not. And so if you could just kind of talk about what is early voting? What would you experience if you went into a polling place?
Yeah. So early voting essentially is exactly what the name entails. So it is a time in which voting is taking place prior to Election Day. It's usually a subsection. So it's usually a selected time period in which people can go to a specific location. It may be the courthouse for some folks. It may be a polling location. In most states, there are early voting centers in which people can come out and cast their ballots. And the process is essentially the same as it would be on Election Day. You can go in, show your ID, get your ballot, fill it out, send it through the tabulator, get your ballot counted, and get a sticker, just as you would on Election Day, saying that you voted. And so early voting itself is something that, again, it would be beneficial for the state because it follows the same processes as voting on Election Day. And it really does complement the other forms of voting here in the state. Because as you mentioned, Kathy, there is a common misconception regarding early voting and absentee voting. And I want to be specifically clear here that the 2 are not the same, especially for Alabama. Alabama has what is known as excuse absentee voting. So if you go to the Secretary of State's website, and I'll give off the website, you can go to sos.alabama.gov/Alabama-votes. And you can go and click on the drop-down menu that speaks about absentee voting. And it gives you the reasons, it gives you the valid reason or quote unquote excuses in which you can go and you can request an absentee ballot application, which leads to the absentee ballot. And if you don't fall within those 8 reasons as this deemed as valid by the state of Alabama, you wouldn't be able to vote absentee within the state. So you have, when you're really looking at early voting versus absentee, they are not the same. And just to speak to that example that our Representative Jackson gave, there are a lot of people who may not be able to make it to the polls on Election Day because they have it may not be a valid reason to the state, but its value is a valid reason to the people who may not be able to make it to their polling location on Election Day. So early voting will combat that because it gives people the opportunity to be able to cast their ballot and to increase their voter engagement and their voter turnout. Just as Kathy mentioned, Alabama is has the fifth lowest turnout percentage. Even if we looked at this previous election, this general election, when the voter turnout percentage for the state was at 58.55 with at 59%. Alabama has about 5 million people here within the state, and almost 3.9 million people are registered to vote. So that's about 94% of the voter age population. So people are registered, but the turnout is the issue. And that is what early voting can help with. Because everyone who is deemed eligible to vote and have their voting rights should be able to exercise their voting rights here within the state of Alabama. And so, Kat, I want to make sure that I answered your 3 questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was sitting there thinking one of the things that I think it also would do would be to reduce the pressure on the absentee voting system, which is currently, overloaded with
exactly
who don't have any other option.
And it's very confusing for a lot of folks as well. Just the absentee ballot process, from getting the absentee ballot application to be able to get an absentee ballot. So I think that it's perfect when we're talking about early voting. We're able to just make the process, to streamline the process for people while making sure that it still remains secure, as a lot of people like to mention. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
No problem.
All right. I'm going to go now to Representative Clark. Do you see an opportunity for any bipartisan coalition to come together to get early voting for Alabama this year? And also, why do you think Alabamians, regardless of party affiliation, are saying they want early voting?
Well, it's easier to answer your second question, Kathy. It's a matter, we live in an age of convenience, and people just want voting to be convenient, just like so many other services are in our state and our nation. Having said that, I am hopeful. For the first time, I've heard and read comments from some of my Republican colleagues who have heretofore been either against or reluctant to say that they were in favor of early voting. I've heard some of them say that they believe it's time for the Alabama legislature to seriously consider early voting as an option. So I'm hopeful that 2025 will be the legislative session when we pass an early voting bill.
Yes, I think we're all hoping that is one of our deepest hopes for this coming session. So,
amen.
Yeah. And so in 2025, we've got 2 pre-filed bills regarding early voting. And we've got Representative Clark introduced HB 71 and Representative Jackson introduced HB 59. And so I'd like for each one of the legislators to just talk to us about their bill. And the first one, Representative Jackson, if you would tell us about HB 59 and, what's in that bill that we need to be paying attention to.
Kathy, let me say, I'm glad to hear my colleague say she's hopeful. I am cautiously optimistic, but about these bills going anywhere. But at least we have conversation. We hadn't even had conversation in the last 12 years about early voting. But the people wants this, and we represent people. My bill is simple. I'm at 2.5 pages. One really full page if you want to get the synopsis out of the way, and I tried to draft it in a very common way. And I want to get back to what Lan said about absentee. That is not early voting, and a lot of my colleagues were saying that. Well, we have on-site voting. That's not early voting. I got to fill out a form. I got to tell a lie to say that I'm going to be somewhere or not in order to get the application process even going. And so what early voting does, it sets aside, it designates the Secretary of State, the clerks, and the registrars probate judges, whoever's over the elections in the counties, to designate. I said they didn't have to be the same day. They can stagger their days. 3 to 4 days prior to election day to hold an early voting center in their counties where the citizens can come and vote 3 to 4 days prior to the election. And they can do it. They don't have to always be on Friday or Saturday or Sunday. They can do it on Monday. Somebody can do it on Wednesday. They can stagger their days. That's the simplest way that I thought it could be done in order to not cost the state any additional funding. When you go to the clerk's circuit clerk's office, you can register and vote. Go to the clerk's office and you can fill out an application for an absentee ballot. Those people on the job. So why can't they just use that format and let people vote early rather than absentee? That's all we're doing. Mm-hmm. And the hours will be staggered, 7 to 7 in some places, from 9 to 5 in others, and on Saturday and Sunday they adjust after service on Sunday as souls to the polls from 1 to 5. So I think that's a great idea, and it gives access to people who really have been not showing up to vote.
Thank you. I appreciate that overview, and also just basically reiterating it's absentee voting is not early voting. Yes, thank you. Representative Clark, if you can give us a synopsis overview of what's in your bill, HB 71.
I'd be happy to, Kathy. But let me begin by saying that I normally do not introduce bills that other legislators have introduced, especially consistently, the way that my colleague, Representative Thomas Jackson, has consistently. Representative Jackson, has it been 10 years, 12 years that you've been introducing
12, yes.
your early voting bill? 12 years?
12 years.
Yes. When I campaigned for re-election in 2022, the two questions that my constituents asked me most often out on the campaign trail when I was knocking on doors or just interacting with constituents wherever that may have been was, when will Alabama get a lottery? And when will Alabama get early voting? And so based on this interaction, when the 2023 legislative session began, without thinking about what other bills may have been introduced in the past, I went straight to Montgomery and filed an early voting bill to fulfill a promise to constituents. That was in 2023. The bill did not move one iota through the process of getting a bill passed. So I'm afraid, to be honest with you, that I got discouraged and did not introduce the bill in 2024. However, after hearing some Republican legislators say that they feel that it's time for us to seriously consider early voting, and then after speaking with my colleague, Representative Thomas Jackson, I pre-filed my early voting bill for the upcoming session. I believe that our two bills give the legislature, we're not in competition here, and I would wholeheartedly support Representative Jackson's bill. I believe that our two bills give the legislature two viable options for passing an early voting bill. My bill proposes that early voting begin in the election cycle for the November 2026 general election. That's the next statewide election, when voters will elect our next governor and House members and senators for the state of Alabama. The early voting period in my bill would begin the Saturday, 17 days before Election Day, and extend through the Thursday, 5 days before Election Day. And Kathy, thank you for counting when I miscounted the number of days that encompasses. And I think the number is 11 days. And I think it includes 2 Saturdays, which I think is vitally important. And then the early voting period would end again Thursday, 5 days before Election Day. That gives time for election officials to transition and get ready for Election Day. Each county, according to my bill, would operate at least one early voting center for every 1,000 residents. And early voting centers could be located in any branch of a county courthouse or county courthouse annex, a government building generally accessible to the public, or a location that is, and I'm reading from the bill, that is an election day polling place.
Is that 100,000? You said it.
It would be,
yeah, 100,000.
It would be at least, yes, at least one early voting center per 1,000 residents.
100,000, right?
Yes. So in Mobile County, we have shy of, I think, 300,000 residents, and so we will be mandated, if this bill passes, to have at least 2 early voting centers.
All right.
That is basically the bill, but I think we will get a better idea of how each bill looks when you put up the chart that compares them.
Yes, I'm going to put that up right now, and I'm going to share my screen, and I want to show everybody. Make sure that you can see this. When you start looking at these two bills, I really appreciate the fact that we've got two options here, because it's kind of like when you're going out and getting ready to buy something, you can say, what's my bottom of the line? Right now, we are at the bottom. We've got 1 day of voting in Alabama, and that's 7 to 7 on election day with all your polling places open. Walk in, you vote, you check in using the poll pad, you vote using paper ballots. You can spoil your ballot, right there, and you cast your ballot in a tabulator and you get your sticker. Option 1, which is Representative Jackson's bill, which is HB 59, would include all the features in the current system, but it would also add at least 1 early voting center per county, add 4 to 6 days of early voting. And that early voting would be on weekdays and a Saturday, and the early voting centers would be open from 9 to 5. And then on Sunday, early voting centers would also be open from 1 to 5. If you opt for option 2, you get all the features of the current system, plus you get, and I'm just basically giving you the features that you could select. And let me go back on the early voting option 1, you can see at the bottom, it adds 4 to 6 days. Option 2 would give you a number of early voting centers based on the population of the county. So the larger counties would have more early voting centers, 1 per 100,000 people. And then you would have early voting for general as well as special elections begins Saturday, 17 days before, and ends 5 days before election day, which would be like ending the same day absentee voting ends. This early voting would end as well. And so early voting hours on the weekdays can vary from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., as well as on Saturday between 10 a.m. and 7. And that would be set by the county. So it is, something that would be set by the county commission. The county commission would also be required to communicate the plans for early voting so that everybody in the county would realize what the plan was. And it would also, and tell people where their polling places would be for early voting. And it would also require the Secretary of State to integrate all the early voting information, including polling place information, into their website, which currently you can go to find your polling places for election day. And that would add a total of about 11 days of early voting, in addition to the 1 day of regular voting. So there you go. That's what we've got. And it's, like Representative Jackson said, it's like, you go with, if the state can't do but the minimum, then that's the first bill. And then if you want to really, the second bill gives you a lot more capabilities and flexibility in giving people a chance to get in there and go vote. But both bills right now, give us a level of early voting that we don't have. We have no early voting. All right, so I'm going to start off and ask both representatives just to give, if somebody were to argue against early voting, which you'll get when you get to the legislature. For those who would argue against early voting, what would you say to help them understand the benefits? And just there's so many benefits, but what would you say to someone who you come across? And first I'll ask Representative Clark.
Thank you, Kathy. So in my district, in House District 97, there are at least 5 apartment complexes that exclusively serve senior citizens. There's at least 2 assisted living facilities. There may be more of both of these types of facilities. But I'm here to tell you, after serving almost 11 years in the legislature, that if it rains on election day, many of those seniors will not go out in the rain to vote. And they are the folk who are more serious about voting, who take the process seriously and want to vote. But if it rains, many of them will not go to vote. If it's cloudy, some people will not go to the polls because they say that their arthritis bothers them on rainy days. Sometimes our seniors, and not just seniors, but younger folk too, will schedule medical appointments so far in advance that they're not even conscious of the fact that it may be on election day. These seniors have paid their dues and ought to have the opportunity to vote on more than one day. A voter may miss voting on election day because of sickness, because of death in the family, because of the need to travel unexpectedly, and other unexpected circumstances. We need more than just one day to be able to vote. We need early voting.
Thank you. All right, Representative Jackson, how would you answer if somebody was against early voting? How would you convince them?
I will ask the question, what is inconvenient about early voting? I want to, what's the problem? Because it's not really a problem. It's a solution to a problem. But what they're trying to bring forth is that they're gonna give you all of this. I think is those conspiracy theories of not being fair and favorable to them, in a sense where they'll say it's rigged. Some of the Republicans I've talked to say you can't trust people. Well, our elections have been the most safest elections since in the history of electing. Alabama got accused of doing a lot of absentee stuff, but this is not absentee. This is early voting. What's inconvenient about it? Then they're gonna give you a cost analogy. It's gonna cost too much. I don't know. I don't have a cost analogy on either one of the bills, but I know it's not gonna be what when they want a special election, they can pay for it. But this is adding a little more to the general fund, taking a little out. It's not costing the state anything. It's just process they don't want to adhere to, getting the people where they want to be, having the opportunity to vote early. I outlined it. I put it all out there, the reasons why, and all those good reasons plus many more. But I'm asking why they're not convenient. Mm-hmm. Even Republicans want this. The senior people in the Republican Party, they want this. They want the opportunity to do this because most of the people I talk to are Republicans.
If I might add something too, I agree wholeheartedly with what my colleague Representative Jackson just stated. But in preparing for this forum, I just did a little surfing online, and I looked to see. Well, I was interested in seeing what states have populations similar to ours, and what type early voting plans they have passed. Didn't realize Louisiana has had early voting for decades. And so I looked to see what happened with in Louisiana with early voting in this past presidential election. And what I read is this. For the presidential election, Louisiana broke its all-time record for in-person voting, according to its Secretary of State. Nearly 850,000 voters cast their ballots for the November 5th presidential during the 10-day in-person early voting period. 103,456 votes were cast on the final day, October 29th, which was a single-day record in Louisiana. And get this, the previous records were 815,957 total and 99,004 single day during the 2020 presidential election. And it was determined that far more Republicans voted early during this past presidential election in the state of Louisiana, which says to me that this is a nonpartisan issue. Mm-hmm. We can't assume that that the number of Democrats who are going to vote early would increase just the Democratic voter participation. This is evidence that more Republicans in the state of Louisiana went out to vote early than Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Let me add to that. There are some articles where the president-elect pushed that in the 2024 election. Early voting, he told the people there in Ohio and to get out and vote early, because he changed his stance. You know, and several the quadrenniums ago, he was against early voting during the pandemic and all of that. But now he was urging them to vote early, and it paid off in those states. And maybe now, since the president has spoken those words, maybe the Republicans might come on board, because he's for it. And maybe that's why I'm cautiously optimistic about maybe moving the bill this year.
Oh yeah, I think this is the year. I believe it. So Sam, since we've got some time, I was thinking, as someone who goes in and talks to legislators, if you came across somebody that you just knew wasn't going to vote in favor of early voting, how would you try to talk them around? What would you say? You're on mute.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Oh, well, that's a good question, Kathy. So much that could be said, but I think the one thing though I would say is for Alabama to be able to move forward and to progress, we have to be able to work together as a team to get to that level. We have to be able to understand what is truly at stake. And just as the representatives have both said, this isn't a Republican issue or a Democratic issue. This is something that benefits all of the people here within the state. And when legislators work towards the betterment of all Alabamians, that's when change and that's when things start to head in the right direction. So I will really focus on talking about the specific issues that can be addressed with early voting, and really understanding the specific issues that people are facing to kind of curb and counteract those ideas of not being engaged in the process at all, because it's about all of us. It's not just about the elected officials, even though they play a pivotal role, but it's about the people who are within the state who are being affected by the legislation, rather they have good consequences, bad consequences, or unintended consequences. People are being affected throughout. So that will be the point that I really would drive home to folks when it comes to the message around early voting. All
right. So that's gotten a lot of good insights on how we can tackle some legislators, because we need to talk to all of the legislators to push on them to vote yes on an early voting bill in Alabama. And we want as much as we can get. So Sam, the next question I had was, first of all, can you just tell us again, when does the legislative session start? And then what are ways that people who are attending this forum or watching it later could advocate effectively with legislators to advocate for early voting in Alabama?
Yeah, no problem, Kathy. So legislative session begins February 4th, 2025. It's going to be that first Tuesday in February. And that's when it starts. But the work starts now. The work to understanding what is truly at stake and to influencing your legislators to vote for early voting, that begins right now. And you can do that by calling your legislators, emailing them, writing them, coming down to the State House, talking and really engaging with the legislators, because what in a lot of ways, what really moves legislators when they're able to see people from the state of Alabama coming from the specific communities, engaging with them and letting the legislators know that, hey, this is something that we want, and this is something that we really are fighting for. And so we want to have people to engage in the work and engage in the process, because again, it is always going to be about the people who are being affected by the legislation that's being pushed through both chambers, the House and the Senate, and which ultimately becomes law. And so that is what we are looking to do. So if you're looking to be engaged around these bills, around House Bill 59, Representative Jackson bills, or House Bill 71, Representative Clark's bill, make your voices heard at the State House. And if you may not know where the State House is located, that's okay, because I have the address here for you. It is 11 South Union Street, Montgomery, Alabama, 36130. Again, legislative session begins February 4th, 2025, but the work advocating for this starts right now. And just by being on this call, it's a great way to get started, because it shows that you care about this state and how we're able to move forward. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. And you know what? I want to ask all of you. I have been told multiple times by legislators and people who, I guess there was one person that was not a legislator but worked with them, worked on their staff, that if they hear from 10 people on an issue, then that's just amazing. How many people do you think? I mean, right now, on any given bill, I'm just wondering, what is the magic? Is there a magic number? Is there something that, is it, if we all piled on after this meeting, that'd be 40 people to go call the legislators. But what would you recommend? And I'll just leave it open. I'd like to get your feelings on what do you think would make a big difference? And would it be phone? Would it be phone? Would it be email? Would it be calling them up, visiting with them, whatever?
Phone and email, but ask them to co-sponsor. Ask them to co-sponsor this legislation, because this is what they want, and that's what it's going to take. Being activated and involved and energetic from the ground roots up, and let them know, hey, this is going to be helpful to all of them as well as to those that are running for office. So this is how it's done. And if they can't come, call more than once and use the email process and let them know that we want some change in Alabama, and this is the way it's going to go about doing it. And the people has the power in their hands.
Yes. All right.
Captain, if I could just chime in for just a quick second, I'll say in addition to that, request a public hearing about these bills. If you really are in support of it, the only thing you have to do is just reach out to the specific clerk for these specific committees. And I know for these bills here, HB 59 and HB 71, I believe the clerk is Cliff Richard, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Yes, ma'am.
CLIF, one F, Cliff Richards. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. And being engaged and reaching out to him and saying, hey, this is something that we're requesting a public hearing about these particular bills, HB 59 and HB 71, and then get your colleagues, get your family, get your friends, get your people and get them engaged and get them involved and bring them to the State House so your voice can be heard, because that's another great way to move your legislators as well. So that's all, Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you.
But let me add, though, that we first got to get the bill on an agenda in
Yes,
the
that's
committee
right.
to which it is assigned. We can't even request a public hearing until we know that the bill is going to be on an agenda
That's
of a
correct.
committee. And that's been the problem heretofore, is that we cannot even get Representative Jackson's bill on a committee meeting
Calendar.
agenda.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how do we make that happen?
We place those calls, send those emails, and ask that the bill be vetted in committee, that it get a favorable report in whatever committee that it is assigned to. And I think we already know, Sam, do you
CCME.
remember that both bills are signed to Constitution Campaigns and Elections?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
That's
I think
correct.
they probably are.
Mhm.
But ask committee chair, Representative Bob Fincher, to place one of these bills on his committee agenda early on in the session. And we want it early on in the session so that we don't run out of time before the bill can get passed. That often happens, is that a bill will eventually get on a committee meeting agenda, but then, and it might get a favorable report. It might make it to the floor of the House and eventually get passed out of that particular chamber, but then it has to go to the Senate, and it has to go through that same process. It has to be approved by a Senate committee and then by the full Senate before the bill then goes to the governor for her signature. So if we can get Representative Jackson's bill on the agenda in Constitution Campaigns and Elections early on, that will increase the probability that the bill could be passed in the 2025 session.
That's right.
One
So
more thing I'd like to add is that contact the speaker. Let the speaker know that we're supporting this and want him to get behind it, because it's going to help all of us. He controls what goes and comes, you know. He's Speaker of the House, so he can talk to his rule chair, he can talk to the committee chairs and tell them, hey, I want you to be a move, and they'll move it. But if we don't have that support coming from him and other important people there on the Republican side of this agenda, we're not going to get anything. We still just making hay and crying loud and saying nothing. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to take all of that going on process to make this thing happen.
That's right.
so when we send, the league has been sending out, we've started a Take Action Tuesday email, and for the last 2 weeks we've really been focusing on early voting and trying to get folks to take action. And so when we send it out next week and we ask people to call your legislators, one of the things we want you to call, we really do want you to call and write your legislators, but we can also look for these leaders and talk to them about why we think this is critical for Alabama. And that's something that, you don't have to be real eloquent. You just need to let them know that you're watching, you're paying attention.
Right.
And we're making these into bite-sized actions so that you can take an action on Tuesday morning or Tuesday during the day, and then be ready for next Tuesday, because we're going to, we want to keep pushing. And we are requesting a hearing. I've actually asked it from several folks. And I've asked my representative to co-sponsor the bill, but we'll see. They didn't say yes.
Thank you for asking.
That's wonderful. That's good news. Thank you.
I mean, it's, you just put it out there. They can take it or not. All right. So I'm gonna go around and so I think we're getting done a little bit earlier than we're going to have extra time for questions. But right now I'm going to go around and I'm going to ask people, do you have any final statements about early voting for Alabama? And I'm going to start with Sam. You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I will just say this is something that is early voting. It's something that is beneficial, regardless of which side of the aisle that you're on. It's a nonpartisan issue. It's a nonpartisan focus that can benefit people from all across the state. And so we're really looking to get this push within all sectors around Alabama, because this is something that is necessary. And I say this to you all. My motto this year is there's no negotiating necessary. We have to work to get it done. And so that's something that I just want to leave with you all, and that the power, again, is in the hands of the people. Because it's always about the people. If this is something that the people want and they're focused on achieving this, let's organize, let's get together in order to make it happen. So that's the only thing I just want to leave with you all this evening around early voting. So thank you. Thank you, Cap.
Thank you. And so I'm going to go next to Representative Clark.
Thank you, Kathy. So, despite some naysayers, early voting is very popular among voters in 47 states, not 4 states, not 7 states, but 47 states, all but Alabama, Mississippi, and New Hampshire. In the Alabama legislature, Representative Jackson knows this to be true. We sometimes say, thank God for Mississippi. Well, yeah. we say that less and less these days. I mean, Mississippi has been beating us, to the finish line in many cases, and let's not let that happen in this particular case. Let's approve early voting before our neighboring state. More people are taking advantage of the convenience of early voting in election cycles, and there will still be people who wait until the end and vote on election day. Our election system should and does accommodate these people, but for many others, I would say the notion of an election day is antiquated, and it's time that we implement early voting in the great state of Alabama.
All right, Representative Jackson, thank you.
So when you think about early voting and think about the preamble to the Constitution, we the people. And I was thinking as Sam was speaking, that the president, our 16th president, said, Lincoln said, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So this is the process, by and for. And so when we participate, we are maintaining that process. We're not leaving it in the hands of politicians. We are involving ourselves, and this is what it's going to take. And I really appreciate the way you thoroughly talked about how we must reach out and across the line and touch, even in this process of early voting. In all other cases, when bills are brought to us, no one has really asked us to support those bills. They'll bring them out. And if you hadn't read it, you won't know anything about it until you start voting on it. So then they won't want the debate. All we're asking for a hearing. Let the people make that decision, whether they want to or whether they don't want to. It's in their hands. So this is an opportunity for the people to make a decision on what they want and need in the state of Alabama.
That's right.
Yes, a hearing. We need a hearing first, and we need. If we get a hearing, the Alabama channel will have it on record, so everybody will know what our legislators are saying,
yes,
why they don't support it, and why they do support it.
Exactly.
But so thank you all. And I got one more thing I wanted to ask Representative Clark. But before we go on to that, I wanted just to say that the League of Women Voters has adopted early voting as one of our 3 top priorities for 2025 legislative session. We are convinced, democracy works better when everyone votes. And right now, Alabama has obviously got a problem because we don't have a good voter turnout. And this is true at federal, state, and local elections. And so this forum has been an excellent opportunity for us to learn about early voting and why it's needed. And we need all of you to help us take action and turn this ship around so that this total absence that we're suffering through. We do not have all the options that we need to be able to have a better democracy in Alabama. So we just need your help, and I really appreciate all of the panelists tonight, because this is the discussion we needed to have. And I want to thank everyone who's online too. But before we go, I wanted to stop for just a minute, and I was asking Representative Clark. There's our second, number 2 priority is another bill that she's got, which is HB 77. And so I was hoping that she would tell us about that, and just, tell you, you're going to see some actions from us on that as well as from some of the other organizations. So would you talk to us about HB 77, please, and let everybody know what it's about?
And so I will tell listeners what HB 77 is about. And before I filed HB 77, I filed HB, I think it's 31. I have since filed HB 77 in lieu of HB 31, but both bills still appear on the legislature's website. I'm hoping that leadership will allow HB 77 to be placed on the agenda of Constitution Campaigns and Elections Committee. And what this bill would do is allow disabled individuals to designate a person of their choice to hand deliver the disabled voters, absentee ballot application, and also their absentee ballot to the absentee election manager on behalf of that voter. Right now, the law states that only the voter who's voting absentee can hand deliver both their application and their actual ballot to the absentee election manager's office. And there are people who are physically unable to go to the mailbox, to their own door, to place their application on the mailbox, let alone to go to the absentee election manager's office. And so I'm hoping that I will be able to get this bill passed. I'm introducing it for the second time around as well, that my colleagues will be more sensitive to the needs of disabled voters and allow them to simply designate a spouse, a child, a neighbor, a person of their choice to mail their absentee ballot application or to hand deliver their absentee ballot application to the absentee election manager's office. That is basically what the bill entails. And I introduced a second version of it, HB 77, after getting input from an advocacy organization for the disabled that wanted me to use the definition that the Americans with Disabilities Act uses to define who is disabled, not just physically disabled individuals, but folk who are intellectually disabled as well. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions about the bill.
And I wanted just to add that the reason we are so adamant that this bill is needed, as well as early voting, is because there are a lot of problems with the current system. The fact that it's only one day of elections, but also with absentee ballots, you can see all the way from the time someone gets their application in to the time on election night when there's a problem with affidavit envelope. There needs to be some fixes made, and this fix to allow someone to hand deliver or to pick up a disabled person's absentee ballot application or absentee ballot would fix some of those problems. Early voting would fix others. Our third priority is absentee ballot affidavit curing, which would allow someone to fix the defective affidavit envelope. And these 3 bills would go a long way to making Alabama's elections, more reliable and have integrity, because voter integrity goes both ways. You've got to be able to count and be confident that your vote's going to count and that it's not being lost. And so this is this is definitely some important material, and we need everyone's help in making it, getting these laws passed. And so,
well, Kathy, if I might add, I've had many individuals say to me, well, who's to know that I mail my mom's absentee ballot application or my neighbor's absentee ballot application? You shouldn't have to worry about that. The law should not prohibit you from being a good Samaritan. And that's all this bill is designed to do, is to allow people to honestly assist a person in need, a disabled person. And there's no reason why we should not give disabled voters that opportunity.
Could I close with this? Having a heart of compassion. That's what Jesus would do. I want to use that term. Having a heart to help someone.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we talk that up here, but we don't live it down here. We got to live that love. We got to show it by what we do every day for the least of those. For those who need it the most, we ought to give the most. And that's what we are failing right there, Sam. We're failing our citizens in that manner.
That's right.
All right. So you got a little extra tonight because we were focused on early voting, but I thought I can't let an opportunity pass to have you talk about it, to have a little discussion on the other bill. So
thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate your putting the bill in, and both of you, because this is what, it takes people like the two of you to help get legislation through the system. And we want to help you make this bill success. All three bills, I think, can go. I think that what we need is to take both of your early voting bills and create something that, somebody needs to find a happy place between those, because then we'll be able to, Alabama
that would not be difficult. We start with Representative Jackson's bill, and if there's parts of my bill that we want to incorporate in his bill, all we do is amend it. That's an easy fix.
Well, that's good.
We just need everybody's help to get his bill on the agenda in Constitution campaigns and elections. So I'm asking, what's your bill number again?
59.
59. Ask that House Bill 59, early voting House Bill 59, be placed on the agenda. I'm asking that. Please.
Oh, that's wonderful. Let's work together. Let's get it done.
Absolutely. All right. So I'm going to pause here and open it up for questions. And we've got some folks who've been watching the chat and the Q&A. Are there any questions for the folks?
There is one question about what the possibility of passing something to send a ballot to everyone that has a valid Alabama driver's license. I knew that would make you laugh.
0 to none. In Alabama, we tried to get early voting. I would love to have that happen. A lot of states electronic voting, and then you got just wouldn't that be great? But let's do one thing first. Let's try to get early.
And I don't remember. I think it's a small number of states that might do that. Sam, do you remember from your research? There are only a handful of states that actually, mail out absentee ballot applications to the entire electorate. I can tell you that our current mayor here in the city of Mobile, when he ran the very first time, he mailed out a bunch of absentee election applications to voters in the city of Mobile. That was one of his election strategies.
It worked.
That individual who asked that question brought up the issue of transportation with respect to voting. And Kathy, I just wanted to kick out that in this last general election, was it the organization Lift Our Vote that provided, there were a whole lot of league people that actually gave people rides to the polls, and that was a wonderful organization that was very effective that day. Another question for option 2. Does the bill include day 17 and day 5? If so, it will be 13 days.
I think what Kathy helped me realize was that we counted, I think we counted Sundays, and I think they are not included in that particular bill. Kathy, is that how we got to 11?
Yeah, and also we had to stop. We assumed when we were counting, you stop when they say 5 days before the election. That gets you Thursday. So Thursday is the last day you could early vote according to that bill. And so that added up to 11.
However, if somebody sees it differently, we stand corrected. We want early voting.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll take 4 days. We'll take 6 days. We'll take whatever we can get.
Well, that is why the league is not we feel like we're good. Both of them would be better than what we've got now.
Yeah.
That's
cost is going to certainly be an issue. Representative Jackson mentioned that early on, and that's why I believe we stand a better chance at getting, while I want more days of early voting, I think we might stand a better chance of getting a handful of days, at least it's a good starting point. And so we start with 4, we start with 6, and then when we see that it's working, that there's a great demand for it, then we increase the number of days.
Any other questions, Judy?
Well, questions that about links, like there is a link in the chat to the committee members on the committees, but I just wanted to point out that some of the information that people have talked about wanting, we will send out in the follow-up email, number one. And number two, I wanted to be sure that everybody on the call was on our email list, because some of this information we're sending out when it becomes important to do something about it. So they should see that covered in the emails as well.
Yeah, and one of the things we're doing is working in collaboration with other organizations that are doing calls to action. For example, the library folks, they've got some bills that they need help getting advocacy on. And so we're helping them get the word out, but they're also helping us on our actions. So these calls to actions that we're talking about, we're hoping it's a big multiplier effect that, we're all going to be basically stronger this year and more focused, laser focused on getting some action. And we're starting now because, and that's what Judy was just talking about, these Take Action Tuesday email we started 2 weeks ago, because we know that by the time the legislative session starts, there's going to be not a whole lot of oxygen left in the room for us to get people's attention. All right, so Melanie made that comment about libraries need help, and we're partners with them as well. But we're all basically working together to help each other get, to do the advocacy, to work together. And the Alabama Voting Rights Coalition is another group that we're part of. And so, when they're working on the Alabama Voting Rights Act, we'll be working with them on that, in addition to these bills that we're pushing. So anyway, it's just, this year we're like Sam said, it's like, we're not giving up this year. We're not stepping back, and you lean in. I do see, Judy, if there's not any more questions, I see a hand up.
Yeah, there was, Jonathan Davis said that it was worth pointing out that some nations, i.e. Australia, make voting compulsory. Some states, e.g. Georgia, did that as well a long time ago.
Yeah, that would be an interesting concept. I wish we could. All right, so I saw Roger, but Roger, you don't.
Yeah, hey, Roger said that he gave a copy of the early voting bill to Anthony Daniels, and he said he would be a sponsor. FYI.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
Okay.
All right. That's good. All right. So I guess if that's
Kathy, I will also say that when I contacted my legislator, Travis Hendricks, he said he wanted to be a co-sponsor as well. So
that's awesome. That's really good. So yeah, we're trying to get some energy, but we need some buzz. So definitely. All right. Well, I think if that's all the questions we've got, I wanted to thank the panelists again for being here with us tonight.
Kathy, we did have one other thing that came up in the chat.
Yes.
Somebody wanted to know if there were what specifically other legislators are giving as reasons for not wanting to support this so that they can address that reasoning directly when they contact them. So are there some specific things?
So I was going to mention, I think it was Mac Butler was saying he has never heard from any of his legislators before. That is a shame. And that's also correctable. So I think the thing you're hearing is, I think a lot of people are falling back on the excuse that they never heard from their constituents before on this topic. And so I think we can fix that. Anything, do you guys have anything to add to that?
I agree.
I was going to say this.
Yes. Well, go ahead, Representative Jackson.
This is going to change that, because we're getting you backing us. Here before, we never had support from an agency or a civic group, no more than NAACP. But that was a time we had a press conference at the King Memorial Church there downtown several years ago, and as far as it got right there, it never got into the news. And so now that we are involved in the process and you all are pushing, there's no more excuses.
Yeah. So
this is what they're asking for, and we're making sure that we educate them and they get into their representatives and senators that they're supporting this and they're expecting them to support it. And to hear those names saying they want to co-sponsor, that's starting us something right there.
Definitely. We're going to keep asking. Anyone?
I think, yeah. I just added to chat that another leader that needs to hear from citizens who are in favor of early voting is our Secretary of State, Wes Allen. He is adamantly opposed to early voting. He said when he ran, I think you all probably have some of you have read where he's been quoted as saying he believes in election day, not election month. But we don't have to have election month. We settle for election week because we think that's the voters want more than just one day to go to the polls. So I encourage you to also call the Secretary of State's office and leave a message for Secretary of State Wes Allen to let him know that you are in favor of early voting.
Yeah, that would be really powerful if folks would call and just say, I'm a voter. I want it, because he's elected also. He is elected. He's not an appointed official. So he needs to know people will pay attention and are paying attention.
And often when it comes to this type of issue, many of the legislators will follow his lead. And so if he says that he's against it, many will support him and not go against, what he feels is best for the state of Alabama. And in this case, we know early voting is in the best interest of the state of Alabama and its citizens.
Absolutely. Sam, were you going to add to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna make one final point for folks that are here on this call. I'm gonna switch gears just a little bit, going back to how to influence your legislators. So with the ACLU of Alabama, for those who still want to learn more information about how to move legislators, we are actually hosting our community teaching event known as Work the Ledge. That is available to anyone who would love to come. Just basically just showcases how bills are passed in the legislators, what you can do to move legislators as well. It's going to be at the Equal Justice Initiative here in Montgomery, and I just dropped the link in the chat. So folks, if you want to register, please feel free. It is free, and we would definitely love to have you all to join us for that. Panelists, colleagues, and collaborators, as well as everyone that's on this call here tonight. So just want to leave that with you all, and just to thank you all once again just for taking the time this evening just to be here with us.
And I will say, I just clicked on that link. It says the deadline to register is February the 5th. And the event is on the 15th. And that's yeah, definitely good information. I'll include that in our letter, our email that goes out to everybody. So yeah, awesome. Now I will say, Representative Jackson, this last 2 or 3 years has felt like every time we get started, we're fighting off the bad stuff and the evil. And so we're coming in strong up front to get this bill. We want this bill passed. And so we're going to follow the lead of some of our legislators from last year. And we want to push on the good stuff up front. And it's, we want this bill passed, and we're going to not be drugged down by all of the really bad bills until we get through this one through. We want to dominate. We want to dominate what's going on.
Thank you for that. we got to stay focused, and we got to stay energized. That's what it's going to take, because they try to wear us out. That's their purpose, to wear us down. But we're going to stay energized and focused. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate all of you. And Sam, are there any other questions that we missed? I think sounds like we have answered the questions.
In a very I tried, but it wasn't a hyperlink. Kathy, I know that I have sent you and Sam both a link to a story that one of the local television stations here in Mobile did on the problems that disabled voters had mailing their absentee ballot applications for the presidential election. If you would please send that link to everyone who has tuned in so that they can hear some of the voices who were impacted. And I think they will get a clear understanding of the need for HB 77.
Okay, I'll do that. I have that reference.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we've come to a close, and I appreciate everyone's time. I am so grateful to the panelists, and I want to point out that we've got another forum. We've got 2 more forums next week. We've got the voter skills training, which we do every month. And this coming week, I'm going to make sure I tell you the right date. It is on Tuesday, January the 21st at 2:00. And that one, we're going to start we're starting to talk about the municipal elections. There are over 470 municipal elections across Alabama this year. We're also going to talk about the changes to the moral turpitude laws. Basically, the moral turpitude definition has changed, and we're going to have Ellen Butcher from Campaign Legal Center talking to us about, what that means as far as our ability to get people their rights restored. And so we hope you'll join us on that one. And then on Thursday, we have got Representative Marilyn Lands and Representative Susan DeBose and Mrs. Dahlia Abrams from Birthwell Partners. And we are going to talk about presumptive Medicare for, I may have the name wrong, presumptive Medicaid for people who are pregnant, because there is a bill that they are both co-sponsoring along with several others to enact to allow people who are pregnant to immediately get health care instead of having to wait until they get verified pregnant, because apparently a home test is not enough. And so anyway, these are important programs, and that one is another one of our priorities, and we hope you'll join us, and we'll send out links to those as well to all of the people who are on our interest list. And I guess we'll keep pushing, getting ready for February. Thank you all, and good night.
All right.
Good night.
Blessings. Have a good one.
Thanks.